Welcome to our lesson on multi-step equation word problems. What we're going to be doing in this lesson is annotating, and then we will be writing an equation and solving. When you try these problems on your own, you don't have to annotate, but you will need to write an equation and solve. This is different from the problems that we did with 7EE3 because equations weren't required at that time, but they are for this standard, which is 7EE4. All right, let's get into it. You are fencing a rectangular puppy kennel with 40 feet of fence. The side of the kennel against your house does not need a fence. This side is 12 feet long. Find the dimensions of the kennel. So let's go through and annotate. I know that I'm using 40 total feet. So that's my total. I also know that one of the sides is 12 feet long and another side doesn't need any fence. The other thing that's important here is that this is a rectangle. A rectangle is important because the opposite sides are the exact same. So let's go ahead and draw a picture to help ourselves understand this a little bit better. So we'll pretend that's our house. And we've got a fence. It's going this way, it's going this way, it's going this way. And what we know is that this side that's against the house is 12 feet long. And that doesn't need a fence because it's going to be blocked in naturally. But the side opposite of that is also going to be 12 feet. And then I don't know this side, but I know that it's the same as this because the properties of rectangles tell me the opposite sides are equivalent. So now I can go ahead and set up my equation, remembering that I don't need that extra side because we're not using actual fencing to block it in. So I've got my side that's x plus my side that's 12 plus my other side that's x. It's going to equal 40. Now I'm going to combine like terms to make this a two-step equation. 2x plus 12 equals 40. We're going to subtract 12 from both sides, and I'm left with 2x equals 28. Now I can divide by 2, and I find out that x is 14 feet. But that's not the answer to my question because my question actually asks to find the dimensions of the kennel. So this is 12 feet by 14 feet. Dimensions mean tell me the length and the width. All right, on to the next problem. The perimeter of a square is 132 inches. Each side has a length of 5x minus 2. Solve for x. Well, I know for sure that it's going to total out, so I'm going to put an equal sign to be 132 inches. The other thing that I know is that there are 4 sides that are that length, so I'm going to say times 4. If I were to draw a picture just to help myself out, pictures are not required. I know that a square has 4 equal sides. If this side is 5x minus 2, then this side is 5x minus 2, and so is this side, and so is my last side. Now there's an easier way other than just adding all 4 of those sides. That would be a lot of computation. What I can do instead, if I want to, is say 4 times the quantity, 5x minus 2, equals 132. Now, if you prefer to add that side and that side and that side and that side, that's fine. That works just as well. But I think this is simpler, less room for error, and we're going to go ahead and multiply this out. 4 times 5x is 20x, okay, minus 8, equals 132. What I'm going to do next is add 8 to both sides. And then I'm left with 20x equals 140. And from there, I'll divide both sides by 20. X equals. Now the zeros cancel out, and 14 divided by 2 is 7. It told me to solve for x, so I have 7. But let's go ahead and make sure that that makes sense. So if I plug it back in, 5 times 7 minus 2, that would be 35 minus 2, which is 33. And I know that each of these sides would be 33 because 33 times 4 would get me to my grand total of 132. Okay, on to the next slide. I want you to try this one on your own and pause the video and then see if you come up with the same answer as me. All right, hopefully you got the same answer. Let's go through and annotate because, again, on your own, if you choose not to annotate, that's okay. But for now, we're going to annotate together. I am thinking of a number. If the sum of the number and, if the sum of the number and 6 is multiplied by 5, the total is 46. What is the number? Okay, so I know I'm doing something with sum of the number, which is x or n or whatever, and 6. If that whole thing is multiplied by 5, which means I'm going to put that in a quantity and say times 5, the total, which means equals, is going to be 46. So we basically have our equation set up for us. 5 times the quantity, x plus 6 equals 46. Because again, the sum of x and 6 needs to be multiplied by 5. So we do need to wrap it in parentheses. It's a group. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and distribute. So it's going to say 5x plus 30 equals 46. Oh, sorry. And then I'm going to subtract 30 from both sides. So subtract 30 over here, subtract 30 over here. 5x equals 16. And then I'm just going to go ahead and divide both sides by 5. Now, I know that 5 goes into 16 3 times, because that would be 15, and then there's 1 left over, 1/5. So I can either say that my answer is 3 1/5, or I can convert that to a decimal, 3.2. Either way is fine. I'm going to use 3.2 for now, because I'm going to plug it back in to make sure it works. So my answer is 3.2, but now I want to check it. So the number and 6, so 3.2 plus 6, which would be 9.2. If that's multiplied by 5, the total is 46. So let's go ahead and multiply by 5. 2 times 5 is 10, and then 5 times 9 is 45, plus 1 is 46, 1 decimal space over. So it is a total of 46. So I know that my answer is 3 2/10, or 3 1/5. Okay, next, now you're going to need to know a little bit of vocabulary for this. So we're going to go through this one together. The sum of 3 consecutive integers is 54. What are the integers? Now, the word consecutive is important here. If you win 3 consecutive games, that means you won 3 games in a row. So what this means here is in a row, and I want you to annotate that on your sheet as well. Consecutive means 3 numbers in a row. That could be 15, 16, 17. That could be 1, 2, and 3. It could be 100, 101, and 102. It could also be negative numbers, -5, -4, and -3. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to define our first variable, because we don't know what these numbers are, but we know that they add up to 54. So I'm going to say that x is my first number. Now what I know is that the next number is going to be 1 above. So if I found out my first number was 10, the next number is 11. If I found out my first number was 22, my next number would be 23. So what I'm going to say is that the second number is x plus 1. Because no matter what x is, the second number, if it's consecutive, if it's in a row, it has to be plus 1. And then, let's think about this. If you found out the numbers were 10, 11, and 12, to get from the first number 10 to the last number 12, you're going up 2. So what we're going to say is that it's x plus 2 to be the third number. Now that will work every time. Think about it. If you had, 20 as your first number, 21 as your second number, 22 as your third number, it's a 2-number hop to get from the first number to the third consecutive integer. Okay, now, the other hint that I want to point out is that they are integers. If you ever do one of these problems, because these problems will come up again, and you get a decimal, you know that it's the wrong answer, because in this situation, we can only have whole numbers, integers, and so the problems work out perfectly so that they are whole numbers or their opposites. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I know that the sum of these numbers, x, x plus 1, and x plus 2, is going to total out to be 54. So I'm going to add that up. X plus, this one now, x plus 1, plus the last one, which is x plus 2. And it's going to equal 54. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at that. I've got x, and x, which is 3x, plus 1 and 2, which is 3, equals 54. Now, my next step is going to be solving using SADMEG. So what I'm going to do is subtract from both sides, and 54 minus 3, I get 51. Now, my next step is to divide both sides by 3. And when I do that, I get 17. Now, that doesn't answer my question because it says, what are the integers? Well, if the first integer is 17, the next one must be 18, and the next one must be 19. So my answer is 17, 18, and 19. But let's check that. Let's make sure that this is correct. 17 plus 18 would be 35, and then plus 19 would be 54. So those do add up to 54, and they are consecutive. They are in a row, so I know I got my right answer. Okay, now I want you to pause the video in a moment and try this one on your own, but there's something a little bit tricky. It's very similar to the last problem, except now you know that it's going to be some negative numbers. The other thing that I want to point out is that it says it's the sum of two consecutive, so in a row, but even integers. So like -8 and -6, or 12 and 14, or 100 and 102. They have to be even. So I want you to go ahead and pause. If you get stuck, you can of course press play and see how I start my problem. Okay, so hopefully you had a good setup like I do. My very first statement that I'm going to make is that x equals the first number. I have no clue what these numbers are, so I'm just going to go ahead and say x is the first one. Now, let's say I found out that it was -10. The consecutive number with -10 that's even is -8. Let's say that I found out, if it was a positive question with a positive answer, that the answer was 60. The next consecutive even integer is 62. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying x plus 2 is the second consecutive even number, or you could even say integer. Okay, now I know that these are going to add up to be -54. So I'm going to add this plus this, x plus 2 equals -54. 2x plus 2 equals -54, and then I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. 2x equals -56, and then from there what I'm going to do is divide both sides by 2, and I get x equals -28. Now, what I need to do is figure out what the next consecutive integer is. Think about it on a number line. We're going up, positive in the direction, 2 in the direction towards 0. So it's -28 and -26. Now, if you're not sure that you got the right answer here, what you can do is add them up. -28 plus -26 is -54. So we know we got the right answer. Okay, and the last problem is up to you. Go ahead and try this on your own. You can decide if you want to annotate or not, but you do need to write an equation and solve. And we will go over that later. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.